Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happenstance into this Truth Bomb Riff. My name is Patrick Lovell, and I'm recording on Friday. It would be March 14th, 2025, in the afternoon sometime. But I'm doing something new, and I'm actually really excited to experiment with this. But I'm going to try to share my screen, and hopefully I can get into a scenario where I can talk to you while I'm navigating my um, incredible website that I put together with my colleagues, Roseanne Rabiola Mile and, of course, Tosh Labrum out of the Las Vegas area. And if you're happening to watch this guy built one of the greatest websites I've ever seen, and he is a gun for hire. And so if you need somebody to build you a website that is this cool, please let me know, and I will facilitate a meeting. So, look, guys, as always, chaos is happening today. Doge, Trump, Ukraine, Gaza, the end of the world, shutting down government, all of the rest of it, and people are losing their minds, right? And so we're seeing a smattering of protests all over the country. I happen to talk about this in my last Truth Bomb, and I've been getting some traction on X about this, where I've actually reached out to try to connect with those incredibly courageous and super smart folks that own Teslas that are basically, and nobody's put this together. And I happen to mention this in my Truth Bomb and also in my description on X. I'm like, you guys are like the patriots of the Boston Tea Party, dumping your tea. You're dumping your Teslas in the face of the wicked tyranny of the billionaire freaking specter freak show that he is, Elon Musk. And people are starting to get it. But one of the things that I happen to say, and it's very important to me and imperative about this, is that because I know this, that you can't buy a Tesla unless you're somebody of means. Most likely, you didn't buy a Tesla unless you're pretty smart, probably a college graduate, maybe you've got an advanced degree, and you kind of look at the world a specific way. And a lot of people that bought Teslas before Elon Musk was our de facto president for the fascist Trump empire and its extension with Putin and all the rest of it. That most people bought Teslas over the course of the last 15 years because it was the innovation paradigm change, game changer of the electric car revolution, which was absolutely brilliant, and it didn't come together by a sleight of hand. Actually, I shouldn't say that. What am I trying to say? It wasn't by accident that it was a success. There was a lot of reasons why it was a success, but primarily the full backing of the United States government and the government subsidies and everything that went with it that guaranteed Tesla through the shorts and all of those challenges of the years of it being not profitable. And so it's really, and I'm so sorry, I'm clearing my throat. It's so disheartening. It's so frustrating. It's so beguiling. It's so incredibly nauseating, the betrayal of Elon Musk to the United States government to take those billions and billions and billions of dollars of government largesse and become Doge. It's absolutely insanity. So people are all over the map. And as I record this on a Friday afternoon, the latest news information is that we are under this gauntlet of this roulette that's happening with the budget, the congressional budget extension and whether or not Chuck Schumer is going along with it. And there's been pushback by the Democrats who don't want to fund the government because it's just going to further underpin the leverage of Trump in the hijacking and the betrayal of Trump and Doge and all the rest of it. But we're in a really bad place where there's no good options. And there you go. So there's a lot coming at us. There's been a lot coming at us for a long time, and I could go on at length about all of my different opinions, all of my different reflections, and my truth bombs are all over this YouTube channel and on X and now Blue Sky. So there's no shortage of what my opinion is, but that's not why I'm doing this afternoon. This is a tutorial in our reconfigured Clean New Deal website because we had to update it because we originally had launched it before the results of the election. We wanted to basically infuse ourselves into the national dialogue because I kept saying, and I have been saying this throughout the entire Biden administration, but long before that, because of the work that I've created that you can find at www.decon.tv, that the entire arena of communication, the entire arena of government, the entire arena of power has obfuscated and played this game of three-dimensional chess within the context of a three-card Monte and all of these incredible tricks of obfuscation, and they call it tricky, to basically make sure people don't understand what it is that I'm revealing to you. And so we have had for literally over a decade the most outrageous, beguiling reality that I've been trying desperately to get millions of people to understand to prevent what we're in the midst of. But there was a illusion, if you will, that some people weren't touched by all the things that had taken place over the last 14 years. Millions upon millions of people had been destroyed, particularly in the aftermath of the 2008 great financial crisis, and many, many more never recovered. But a lot of people in the top 1%, the top 5%, the top 10% did, but as a result of the information that I'm revealing. But that was a Faustian bargain, because those that are typically the most educated in our society, they're the ones who had expendable income to invest in assets, whether it's real estate or in stocks and bonds. And what we did after the great financial crisis is we floated global markets and our financial system, quite frankly, illegally. And that's a big fucking deal, because as I've been screaming from the mountaintops for a long time, it's corruption. And as I've also been screaming from the mountaintops for a very long time, corruption births and fuels fascism. So fast forward to today, 2025. Is there anyone who doesn't understand that we have descended into madness, where the law is dead, and that we're practically, if not completely, a fascistic country? We're fascist. What does that mean? Well, it's, basically the far right patriarchy built in a corporate paradigm, which is autocracy, which is the strongman role. That's fascism. There's different degrees of it. There was Mussolini to Hitler, and these were all basically kind of the next level of what shaped European history and probably global history for the previous 1,000 years, which was effectively tyranny through aristocracy or the Holy Roman Empire, theocracy, and all of these different manifestations of centralized power. And of course, if you understand anything about democracy, is the idea of the demos, of all of us, is the idea. And yeah, I know what the Republicans say about we're a representative republic and perversion of power and yada, yada, yada. But what everybody is missing, my friends, is the understanding, even though we all know the system is rigged, that we all know we're corrupt, and we have for over a decade. But nobody knows who did what, when. Nobody knows who did what, when, and how, and what actually they got away with. Because the entirety of the government, the entirety of media, the entirety of power, which constitutes the top 1%, spawning from the top 0.1%, that now then kind of basically floated the top 10%. But the lower 90% has been on the treadmill. What am I trying to say? Is it a treadmill? Yeah, it is a treadmill. Treadmill of misery for over a decade. Yeah, it's the Grand Canyon. It's all of the sort of evolutions and the revelations of disparity of wealth, but as I'll also reveal, disparity of intelligence, quite frankly, both of which cannot stand in a democracy where the rule of law and the separation of powers is predicated on an informed populace and those in the system that are accountable to the public and that have character and integrity to uphold the law. Because in the vacuum of that, what do you get? You get corruption. You get massive corruption. You get corruption the world has never seen that then leads to fascism. And of course, although I said the world has never seen it, we've seen it for 1,000 years. It's just bigger now. Technology and the amount of people on the planet and the amount of money that we're talking about, yeah, it's all that and then some. And so I'm going to use this opportunity to walk you through the Clean New Deal website so that I can spoon feed you literally what it is that we're showing you that encapsulates everything I've talked about, that you can either discover on your own time, revisit, but hopefully, if you go through the whole rabbit hole, that you'll understand what it is that I'm saying is truth. And it's not hyperbole, and it's not ideology, and it's not philosophy. It's the truth, the investigative black and white evidence of how things work to create what we've become that has unleashed this madness that everybody's all over the place, basically splintered in 1,000 pieces, predictably, because we've all been in silos for a long time. But boy, am I enthusiastic and inspired by the Tesla owners that are basically, like I said, the Boston Tea Party, dumping their Teslas back into the ocean to protest tyranny. That's what they're doing. And it has to be those of us that are educated, those of us who understand the world, those who understand markets, that have been in the game for a long time, that have to be early adapters to understand that I've got the answers that you're all looking for. And yeah, I'm on the marquee. It says Patrick Lovell presents the Clean New Deal, a declaration to reboot the American dream. And yeah, the reason I'm on the marquee, guys, is because of the work that I did that nobody else has done. You're not going to hear this from Rachel Maddow. You're not going to hear this from Bernie Sanders. You're not going to hear this from Elizabeth Warren. You're not going to hear this from AOC. They're all talking about reacting to all of the stuff that they couldn't be proactive to prevent to begin with, but here they are on their heels. And if anybody understands, if you've ever been in a fight, you can't fight on your heels, but that's of course what the Democrats do, because Biden basically, played his best Neville Chamberlain and didn't use the powers that were bestowed upon the presidency by the corrupt SCOTUS that basically etch-a-sketch the 14th Amendment, Section 3, that, says in black and white that anybody involved with an insurrection can't run for the offices of the United States, let alone the CEO of the United States, the presidency of the United States, of which, of course, the Koch brothers for decades have been trying to create the Unitarian presidency for the libertarian myth, and they funded through millions and millions of dollars the Heritage Foundation Project 2025, which we're all in the midst of, and everybody seems to be surprised by this. But on this particular day, the big conundrum is whether or not Chuck Schumer is going to break ranks and he's going to be able to help the Republicans get the budget approved to, at least fund the government for whatever term. I think it's probably a few weeks, maybe 6 months. I don't know what the actual term is, but everybody's like on the Democratic side, after everything we've gone through with Doge and, quite frankly, everything from the insurrection and all of the impeachment and all of the other stuff, that the 91 indictments that didn't take Trump down, they're like, there's a rift. And, all of this stuff is monumental chaos in the face of global war, in the face of climate change and everything else. And the paradox is that we have the ability to reach as more people than we ever have in the history of the world, right? But we're also thwarted and quashed by the powers that be, who have control of algorithms. They can amplify, they can de-amplify, they can platform, they can de-platform. Could be social media, it could be mainstream media, all of it. And they're all basically two versions of the same thing if they're connected to power. Because what I'm revealing to you is the emperor's new clothes. What I'm going to show you is going to allow you to see the forest for the trees. Because there's a method to the madness. And what we've got to understand in the context of American history, and really in the spirit of American history, it is the heartbeat of American history. First off, when we were born out of the revolution, a great, group of learned men called our founding fathers had the wherewithal to be able to fight the powers that be and pulled off a miracle against the greatest superpower on earth at the time, to forge a revolution to create liberty and justice for all based on separation of powers and the Constitution, so that no man or company is above the law, because they understood that absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's called tyranny. I swear to God, it's the easiest thing in the world for anybody who understands anything about American history, but specifically the American Revolution and why we are what we are. People, what I'm revealing to you in terms of its contextualization is literally what you should have known by junior high school, let alone high school, let alone college, master's, PhD, whatever. This is simple stuff. This is basic stuff. And for some reason, millions upon millions of Americans don't have a freaking clue that this is why we were born. This is why we raised, stand for the national anthem. This is why the lyrics were written for the national anthem. And yeah, I know 1812 and yada, yada, yada. But this is why we have the Statue of Liberty. This is why we have Washington, D.C. This is why we have everything, okay? This is why we have the law. This is why we say the law is supreme, okay? Which we now all know it's not, because it's been undermined, it's been hijacked, it's been raped, it's been pillaged, it's been roofied, it's been this, it's been that, by this onslaught of what I'd like to call pimps, whores, junkies, and parasites that are the only things that can thrive in the bloated, dead well carcass of the rotting American dream. And so what I have been doing this whole time, alongside my wonderful colleague, Roseanne Rabiella-Mille, and others that have joined on, but we need a lot more, I can assure you, and as well as the designer of this website, Tosh Labrum, is that, and I'm gonna just say hashtags because I'm gonna set this up at the beginning so that as we go through this whole thing, you can kind of keep this in the back of your head. The whole purpose of this is to purge corruption. Hashtag purge corruption. Why? Because you can do that through the Declaration, which some people might call a manifesto. I call it a declaration, like the Declaration of Independence. But we have all the answers. So it's hashtag the Clean New Deal. To redeem the dream. Hashtag redeem the dream. Because when millions of you have the information that's on this page and you know how to navigate it and understand it and read it and get the information and all of the elements that are here, this is the Arkenstone for those of you who are J.R.R. Tolkien fans. This is the Holy Grail. This is the Ark of the Covenant. This is the Rosetta Stone. This is the singularity. This is the answers for what the entire system of government with $90 billion a year apparatus and tens of thousands of employees couldn't rein in on behalf of a government of, by, and for the people because of revolving door corruption. Because the corruption is monumentally bigger than our government. And yeah, after the aftermath of the great financial crisis, we provided tens of trillions of dollars illegally to the system that gave billionaires and their apparatuses the ability to be above the law and market forces. And that's why we're in this chaos that we're in. So let me launch further into this, and thank you for staying tuned, but I hope you can follow along on your computer if you go to thecleannewdeal.org. And as you can see, when you arrive at this page, we set up in our tabs at the top. By the way, what you're going to see here, if you can see my browser, is that every time you want to get back to the homepage, the landing page, you click the Clean New Deal. But as you can see, left to right, we have About Us. We have How Does This Affect You? What We Must Do, Precepts of the Clean New Deal, the white papers, which are the most important aspect of this, and then how you can further support the cause. And then if you want to get in contact with me, if you have any questions, if you want me to speak with your group, or any other things that might come to mind, please reach out to me directly. I'm available for anyone who is curious about coming on board, but you might have some hesitancy because you're not absolutely sure of something that you might be confused about. So please call on me at any time. But I think we do a very good job here presenting the reality of what we're all in the midst of right here on the landing page. So Patrick Lovell presents. I'm Patrick Lovell. I'm the producer. Why am I on the masthead? Why am I on the billboard above everything else? Well, because somebody's got to be the oracle for this information. Does that make me better than anybody else? No. Does that make me the most prescient expert on this subject of the entire country? Probably not. Although I will say that the people that most likely know as much as I do are the ones that are engineering this whole thing for the bad guys. I'm the only guy for the good guys that actually has the willingness to talk about this soup to nuts, even though I've got a lot of whistleblowers and incredible professionals in the regulatory body that will speak to the legalese of all these things. But I provide really just the everyman sort of perspective on this whole thing based on just a basic understanding of American history and what we're supposed to be considering what we're not. And so I frame it this way. I say, we don't live in a democracy. Does anybody want to think that we live in a democracy? What is a democracy? Well, it's ruled by the majority. Are we ruled by the majority? In 2002 and 2016, the minority won the presidential vote because of the Electoral College. So in that particular case, no. The Electoral College provides the powers that be, an inverted, perverted version of democracy, which, of course, the Republicans like to say is a representative republic or a constitutional republic. Yeah, you vote for a person to make decisions on our behalf so that every 4 years for a presidential campaign, every 2 years for the representative, every 6 years for the Senate, that we have elections to where those that we put into high office, yeah, they represent the interest of the constituency, which are supposed to be informed and understand how the system works, because nobody wants to vote for somebody who's going to betray them. But unfortunately, that's what we've been doing now for decades. So no, we don't live in a democracy, and a democracy also presumes that the law is supreme. Does anybody think right now, given Doge and given everything that we've seen since the onslaught of the inauguration of Donald Trump to a presidency, that he stole? Yeah, he stole the election. We know that 3.5 million votes were suppressed, just audited by a great journalist by the name of Greg Palast. But there was more involved, and more is going to come to light. But unfortunately, Biden and Harris and Walz stayed silent. They just let it happen. So there's that. But moving forward, are we a capitalistic system? No, we're not a capitalistic system. Why? Because of everything I'm going to show you. We don't have free markets, people. And if you think that the country of the red, white, and blue, of the home of the free and the brave, and all of these wonderful kind of accolades and these tributes to patriotism that we well up when we see a Chevy commercial and everything else, do we have free markets? No, we don't have free markets. Just to kind of touch down on the question, we have monopolies. We have multinational corporations with unbelievable power that basically are more powerful than most nation states on earth. And now, of course, they've been running the United States for a long time because of what I'm revealing to you. And as a result, the law is unequal. Does anyone want to say the law is equal? That the law, gets to its decision-making process for extremely wealthy, rich people versus anybody off the streets? You'd have to be monumentally out of your mind to think that the law is equal. No, the law is not equal. Do we have separation of powers? No, we don't have separation of powers. Corruption rules everything. What have we seen in the last, several decades? We've seen Congress being pilfered because of Citizens United and dark money that enables those with the most resources to buy politicians. So does that mean that the system is balanced? No, of course not. They're working for the people who pay them, or the corporations that pay them. But wait a second. What about the Supreme Court? We found out that the Supreme Court is probably more corrupt than Congress, thanks to the crack revelations of ProPublica that revealed to us that, yeah, billionaires have been playing the Supreme Court for a long time, and then it led to these insane revelations 6 months ago that they put Donald Trump above the law. Okay? That's a problem. And you all know that, but no, the whole system is corrupt. So millions are beginning to understand that one of the sort of ways that the system had become the way it is, something that people could put their finger on, that they could actually look in print and read to understand what the opposition was doing to try to gut the democracy that we had, even though it wasn't a democracy for a very long time, was, of course, Project 2025. And who funded Project 2025? The Koch brothers and their billionaire libertarian think tank apparatus that have been doing this for over 3 decades. And they, the guy I have the name who eludes me, who I think he's in the cabinet, but is he in the Treasury? Anyway, the guy who was the author of this whole thing, was one of the first cabinet picks for Trump, a guy who I'd never heard of until I read the Project 2025 a long time ago. And it's pretty lengthy, but it creates this notion of the Unitarian presidency, i.e., a dictator, which was predicated on decades of corruption in our corporations. where we had corrupt CEOs that were effectively dictators. So they transpose all that methodology that we revealed to you in the con and everything that is in this website, and then we transpose it into the Clean New Deal, because that's the answer to Project 2025, the Clean New Deal. Comprehensive, incredibly ambitious, very thoughtful, checks off all the boxes of everything that's going on, so that we, the people, can be informed, so that we can turn the tables on the misery of corruption. How are we going to do that? Well, as you move forward down the website, I do an introduction. And I basically say the same thing that I just said. I'm going to read it out loud. In a world of fake news and social media chaos and endless misinformation, what is reality? Think about that for a second. What is your reality? What does it look like from the four walls of your existence? Did you have a job in the Department of Education for like the last 30 years until what, Friday, where you just got fired? And now maybe you'll get your job back because a federal judge had decreed that, what Doge is doing is unconstitutional. But for how long? And it will, will the Trump administration find a way to eject that judge? I don't know. I don't know how deep the corruption goes at, let's say, the appellate courts in the federal judicial system, but I'm sure these guys have thought it out, i.e. Bannon and all of these guys on that side, because they've been putting this thing in play for a very long time. Okay. It's incredible how people don't understand what they've been involved with. And that's part of it, because I point out that what is reality? Is it a needle in a haystack? Is it a diamond in the rough? Is it a rare shot at redemption? I.e., you can interchange reality and truth with that question. And I introduce myself. I'm Patrick Lovell. I have the $71 trillion truth that can expose the corruption destroying everything that matters. We have one shot to get this right, my friends. And if I can't connect the truth with the millions of you who need it, we all fail. Now, look, right now, we failed. I don't know why everybody from Rachel Maddow at MSNBC, who has throughout this past week been talking about how bad the poll numbers are for Donald Trump and Elon Musk, who didn't even run for presidency. She continues to, give these poll numbers as if polls matter. Does anybody think we're going to see another free and fair election in our lifetimes again? I don't think we are if we don't get a hold of this now, but it's going to take millions of us to rise up to ensure that we have free and fair elections. But we certainly didn't have a free and fair election in the 2024 presidential election. And Vice President Harris stood down and didn't become the prosecutor to make that case. Why? Your guess is as good as mine. And she's been silent throughout this whole thing. She might be planning something, but it's certainly not going to be a threat to corruption. And that's a big problem, because I'm the threat to the corruption. Okay. I can expose me, Patrick Lovell, with the $71 trillion truth, the corruption that is destroying everything that matters. What is everything that matters? Dynamism, freedom, liberty, justice, the law, the ability to, move around and be free in your choices to marry who you want, live how you want, start a business, come up with a great idea. All of those things that we celebrate and that are dependent for us to function in the United States have all been destroyed in a matter of basically 6 weeks. I mean, they were destroyed before, but we've seen the blitzkrieg of this stuff in a very short order, and it's just mind-boggling. And my friends, really, honestly, I don't know why there's so many out there that literally are sitting on their hands, that are waiting for somebody to save them. You've been doing this now for, I don't know how long, maybe decades in many cases. You put your head in the sand, you put your fingers in your ears, you put your hands over your eyes. You don't speak, you don't see, you don't hear evil. You want this stuff to go away. But if history is any guide, which of course it is, we see this over and over and over. If you allow absolute power to run amok, it'll run all over you. And it will go even further, and depends on what time of history we're talking about. But, to the point where, many, 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 many people will die. and many people have been dying as a result of a lot of the stuff that we've been going on, but in numbers that are just, beyond our comprehension, I think maybe right in front of us if we don't get a hold of this. And yeah, the lights are blinking red. Um, it's no time to waste. You have to get engaged, and this is your pathway forward. Because if this message moves you, I'm imploring you to join me. Together, we can spark a new age, ending tyranny, and bring the renaissance of enlightened possibility to purge this misery of tyranny. This is the Clean New Deal, a movement inspired by the trust busting and the New Deal and the civil rights movement aimed at tackling our greatest crisis, which is corruption. But corruption for a lot of you is nebulous. Corruption's like, okay, wait a second, I'll sit and I'll watch CSI or I'll watch Law and Order or I'll watch a movie in the old days, and you can follow the bouncing ball and you can be engaged and you can be like, oh, I like that character, or I don't like that person. Oh, I didn't see that murder coming, or wow, that was a great story. But when it comes to your absolute understanding of the government that is affects everything that happens to you, why do you want to wait until you're on a plane that's going down or is going to have a collision because air traffic control has been decimated because of cuts to the FAA through corruption? It's extraordinary that people are like, why do I want to wait until it's too late? You can't wait until it's too late, although it is too late. I always think about that analogy, that metaphor of the frog in the warm water, nice and comfy, doesn't go anywhere, and somebody turns up the water to boiling, and then he gets fried, boiled, dies because didn't see it coming. You can't be on your heels, and when you have the knowledge that I'm providing you, you can react in a way where you're on your toes, and we can work together in unison and dynamism, just like the Tesla owners that are basically reconfiguring what the Boston Tea Party was. And I don't know why anybody hasn't said that, but I said it, and hopefully that starts to catch on. But more importantly, inspired by trust busting. Do you know what trust busting is? We had robber barons after the Civil War, and they'd taken over our government. And Teddy Roosevelt came along and said, hell no, you're not going to control our government. And he had victory. He was a big, strong character. And I encourage you all to read The Man in the Ring to understand where he was coming from. And yeah, he was flawed, but he also lived kind of fantastical life journey. But he had the character and the gumption for the United States. And they created trust busting to break up the trust so that the billionaires couldn't control the country, or at least it was an attempt to. Because again, it's very difficult to break up absolute power, especially when absolute power gets entrenched. And at that time period, we had, obviously the robber barons, we had the steel magnates, we had technology, we had oil, we had Rockefeller. Those guys were absolutely humongous. And it was a huge, huge, huge effort on behalf of Teddy Roosevelt to get us trust busting. But that then led to the civil rights movements, the progressive movements, I should say. The progressive movements were, the farmers that rebelled against Wall Street monopolies. It was the labor rights movement that were fighting against, through muckraking, incredible material of Upton Sinclair, and of course, his incredible work. I mean, obviously, where he had said, and this is true today, the easiest way to get somebody not to understand something is if their paycheck depends on them not understanding it, right? I mean, until what though? Until you get, basically tarred and feathered and thrown in the meat grinder? I mean, there are consequences for inaction. And if you allow bad guys to get away with stuff, bullies on the playground or fascists in a revolution, millions of people are going to get hurt. That's history. Who doesn't know that? I learned that on the playground when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade. So yeah, this is in that in order to form a more perfect evolution, and all of this stuff followed the Civil War, where we had a civil war to break the bondage of slavery, which freed, the spirits of innovation, freed the spirits of what was possible, right? Which was incredible. So yeah, and that carried with us through, unfortunately, after the Great Depression, where we had to learn these lessons again, into the Clean New Deal, or the New Deal. Sorry, there's a faux pas. But as you can see, all of these things manifested in American history. And by the way, President Biden said in his kind of outgoing speech that this is exactly what the American people had to do, because this is what we did before, which I found fresh after he played, the role of Neville Chamberlain, shaking hands with Don the Con insurrectionist in the Oval Office to basically give up the power that's destroying our country. And his warning at the end, which is absolutely insane, is like, oh yeah, we're an oligarchy because the neoliberal establishment that became the Clinton meritocracy revolving door of Wall Street created this monstrosity, of which Biden was a part of. I always saw Biden struggling with, who he was in the context of this whole thing. And he always had kind of this inner good guy nature to him, but he played ball the whole time. What, do you not know what he was doing in Delaware? Do you not understand that's the synergy, the basis, the foundation of LLCs and what that means? Not to mention everything he was working with the credit card companies and the pharmaceutical industry, not to mention the prison industrial complex. So yeah, for him to on his way out at the age of what, 80, saying you got to be aware of the military, sorry, the oligarchs, as if he were Eisenhower warning us of the military industrial complex. It's like, come on, are you kidding me? We've been an oligarchy for a very long time, at least since all of the revelations that I'm revealing to you. So do you get the genesis of this whole thing? I'm about liberty and justice for all. Okay. And I know millions of you are too. I know that millions of you get tears in your eyes when you see our national, excuse me, our flag being raised, in a sporting event, maybe a gold medal ceremony, and you hear the Star Spangled Banner, and yet it just sends shivers down your spine. Yeah, I'm like that too. But I know what's happened. And so trust me, I'm a little more cynical and jaded towards the whole thing, but we can get into that downstream. But to get there, to understand what is, you got to know what to get there, you must understand what is to know what could be. So problem solution. So everybody, in this arena where everybody has the bandwidth of a squirrel, they can't see the forest for the trees because they can't even get on first base. They don't even know what the basics of law or a constitutional republic or our democracy or the wars that we had to create the geopolitics that we had. They don't understand finance. They don't understand just the basic mechanisms of power. They just want something to happen in their head. So I can just say something like, okay, well, have you seen Game of Thrones? We're living Game of Thrones. And oh yeah, if you watch Game of Thrones, you know that, well, if you get the Iron Throne, which in this case is the presidency, then you can get the Red Keep and the army, or I should say what do they call it? It's not the Red Army. It's, well, it was whoever the families were, right? Why can't I think of it? But the Golden Army, the Golden Compass, whatever, man. You get the military, but you also get all the families, which might be Congress in this case, and then you get the Iron Bank, which is the Federal Reserve. So yeah, basically what we're in the midst of is if you get a unitary presidency, you get a king that controls the entire apparatus of power. So most of you want to go, what's the problem? What's the solution? I don't care about anything else. And then tell me what we got to do. Okay, I will. I'll tell you what the problem is. For the past 2 decades, the American experiment has fallen into disrepair. From the longest military actions in our nation's history with no real resolution and a global financial crisis followed by a global pandemic, the disparity in wealth is larger than any point in history. This has led to chaos in our legal system and political class ruled by billionaires that have realized trillions illegally in free money to hijack what was left of our democracy and legal system, to betray the revolution and all that the United States sacrificed countless blood and treasure over our 248-year history to achieve. People, the betrayal is biblical and it's immense and monumental, but it's not rocket science. It's racketeering. It's corruption. And we have rules and regulations and the ability, or at least until we got run over by the train wreck of Dodge, where all the law is out the window because of the Republican sellout and betrayal. But yeah, we have remedies for these problems. So the solution is that I produced a project that cost millions of dollars and many years to piece together. It took us thousands of hours to piece this shit together. That creates the revelation of the largest financial criminal conspiracy in history. But here's the key consideration that never ended. It never ended. It spanned 3 presidencies. This particular phase of this whole thing starts with Obama, goes through Trump first term, and then obviously Biden, and we'll see what happens next after everything collapses. I guarantee Trump will find a way to bail out his goons. Okay. And again, that'll just be worse than everything that's already happened. But don't be on your heels. Know what the hell they're doing and why so that we can turn the tables. All of the pieces are on display here on this website with links to elements all over social media that set forth all that makes this clear. However, it was my surprise discovery that led to the revelation that the tens of trillions of dollars that the Federal Reserve provided to the largest racketeering scheme in history, care of Wall Street, was done so illegally. Yeah, I've been on this journey since basically 2008 when I got crushed by the 2008 great financial crisis. But I made my first documentary starting in 2011. It took me until about 2013 when we released it. 2014, I started pivoting towards what would become The Con. And then I think 2016, we started making it. So for the next 4 years, we put a 5-part docu-series together that answers all of these questions. And that took us to 2020. And we got quashed, which is why I've had to go to this direction. But ultimately, I didn't discover until 2022, because of my obsession with this and what we were doing and the fight that I've been fighting, the evidence that I put on this website that reveals why this all happened and how it happened. And you have to endeavor it if you don't believe me. It's all right here. And I'm talking to journalists, especially. If you're a journalist who's, like, somehow the masses are paying attention to me and you're like, who is this guy, Patrick Lovell? And you start to engage and you start to dig in. It's all right here. Everything that the entirety of the $90 billion apparatus of our federal government hid from us. Okay. This is the sum total. It's, again, the Arkan Stone, the Ark of the Covenant, the Rosetta Stone, the Holy Grail. Yeah, that's what it is. Because when you consider all of the problems of our country, people, can you think of a better way to spend $71 trillion to a tiny group of global puppet masters, literally skull fucking everybody? How do you like the fact that Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, richer than any pharaoh or king or anything in the history of the world, is doing Doge to squeeze blood from a turnip and fire teachers and fire scientists and fire, people that have our nuclear codes and know how to implement, nuclear attacks and nuclear defense and everything that this country needs in an effort to try to find waste, fraud, and abuse, when he is ultimately the incarnation and the embodiment of waste, fraud, and abuse, so that starving children can die. That's what we're dealing with. And yeah, is there other things that had problems and corruption? Yeah, but I guarantee you nothing to the level that I'm talking about. Everything is lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate with Trump. And yeah, that manifested itself into Elon. And now we're all hearing stories that Elon, of course, was under the microscope of a lot of regulators. And that was part and parcel of why he got so fired up and wanted to do his jump after Trump got, the first assassination attempt and threw $277 million into the campaign to make 180 billion and 150, 60 billion in 6 weeks after the election. Now he's lost another 50 billion since because of the market fluctuations of what they're doing because of Doge and the tariffs. But there you have it. So what must we do? Okay, you might be thinking to yourself, Patrick, oh my God, what the hell are you telling me? You're pulling the freaking drapes out and I can see the sunlight and you're going to tell me who did what, when, and how, and I can see this in all of your work and it's all backstopped and it's cited and you've got the whistleblowers and you've got the evidence and you've got all of these things that are going to prove every single thing you said. Okay, but oh no, what do I do? My God, this is too big. This is too strong. This is too hard for me. I've ignored this thing the whole time. Well, I'm not talking about to useless people that don't know anything about our society. The people are the ultimate backstop. We're the ones who are supposed to be informed so that we can hold power to account. That's the way the founders designed it. That's why we have the fourth estate of journalism and muckrakers to deliver the truth, to inspire and compel the American people by the millions to rally to hold the bad guys to account, which is happening sporadically all around the country. But what I learned in 2011, when I first made my first documentary film, Forward 13, Waking Up the American Dream, my colleague and I attended 33 Occupy Wall Street encampments on a 3,700-mile journey from the northwest of the United States to the west, through the southwest, up through the heartland and the Rust Belt, and into the corridor, which I call really Oz, which is D.C. to Wall Street. And we got there the day that the NYPD was breaking up Zuccotti Park, and cops all over the country were breaking up encampments. I mean, there was a coordinated effort to make sure that people didn't get what Occupy Wall Street was trying to get out to people, that we had this crisis of instability in everything that we knew that's 14 years ago, but primarily because of the 99%, the disparity of wealth. But unfortunately, at that time, it got splintered because of a lot of reasons, and it never fully understood to gestate the question of corruption, that I had to go on this journey that never ended to be able to bring this information to you. And that's a fact, Jack. Because if you don't have a focus, and if you want to remain in a silo, like let's say, for example, the stuff that I just mentioned in terms of the Department of Education, right? Let's just say that people were fat and happy for a long time and they just living the way they do. They had their pensions. They were, going through the motions. They were going to, retire at some point, and they have their pension. And all of a sudden that just got rug pulled, right? So this whole time they're not paying attention to anything else, but suddenly it happens to them and they're like, oh, somebody come to my rescue. We've got to get my job back. I got to get my pension back. This is illegal. Oh my God, the injustice. Do you really think that they're the only ones who've gotten, completely betrayed by the system? What I'm revealing to you is how tens of millions of people got set up, rug pulled by the largest racketeering criminal operation in the history of the world, that then, of course, never ended because of what I'm telling you. Usually in our society, when criminals do massive crimes, we put together the evidence in what's known as discovery in a trial where it leads to indictments that then goes to a jury trial that leads to convictions. And then they go to jail. And then they have all the money that they stole taken back. That's the way our system is supposed to work. Is that what happened? No. No, we gave the bad guys tens of trillions of dollars illegally so that they're above the law, that they're above market forces. Can't you see the forest for the trees? What do you think Elon Musk is? What do you think Trump is? What do you think the 13 billionaires on the cabinet are? We've been giving them tens of trillions of dollars for free so that they could take your cancer research away, so that they could take away food from starving women and children. Are you okay with that? If you are okay with that, then goodbye. We don't want you around anyway. But if it makes you incensed and furious and outrageously like, what the fuck, then you need to join us. Because what are we going to do? What we're going to do is, one, be aware of Project 2025, but also see, understand how this is our response. Because if we're going to defeat the tyrannical wickedness of corruption that has hijacked all of our political institutions, most shockingly, our Supreme Court, it's going to take millions of us to gather together in Washington, D.C., to make our grievances known to our government and media that we, the people, have had enough because we've got all the answers. But I want to offer this also. We're going to have people all over the country that are basically protesting as the Clean New Deal is their impetus, okay? Because it's the catch-all of everything that we're in the midst of. Like I said, Occupy Wall Street had a great idea. It was going in the right direction, but then it got quashed, but unfortunately got splintered too. And it became like this intellectual sort of conceptualization of capitalism versus Marxism, and those that are typically of higher education. A lot of liberal people turn to Marxism because they understand some of the problems of capitalism, but they didn't fully understand the problems of capitalism because they don't understand this isn't capitalism. Like I said at the outset of this, this is not capitalism. It's not free markets. Why? Because capitalism relies on risk reward. This is a sure thing that I'm revealing to you. This is moral hazard. This is corruption. This is not capitalism. Capitalism doesn't have all of that incorporated into its definition. Capitalism is ownership by private interests that work for shareholders in the market based on profit to bring the means of production and product to the marketplace, okay? For personal profit. And that's the risk reward of capitalists that put money into companies that they think are going to succeed for payback. That's the investment. That's the nature of liquidity. But if you make stupid decisions and you fail, you're supposed to die and go away. That's not what we've done. What we've done is we've elevated the most criminal amongst us that are quite frankly idiots too. Look no further than Donald Trump, right? The guy's an idiot. He's a complete buffoon. He can't even put two and two together on anything. But the one thing he can do is lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate in lie, steal, and cheat. He's transactional. But now he's like into himself, like literally Kim Il Jong. This last 10 years, I kept thinking to myself, dude, I saw Dennis Rodman go to North Korea, and everything that was, which was a trip, and it was a circus cartoon in its own right. And I'm like, that's the category that I put Trump in. But no, it's much more dangerous than the way it was back during Dennis Rodman's time. Okay. So as we further explore, like what we had to do is we had to create the yellow brick road. We had to leave the breadcrumbs. We had to lead you on this adventure to answer the questions in your mind as they're happening, because many of you are just skeptical. Many of you don't know more than you know. And so you're very reluctant to open your mind to something that you're not aware of. And it's like the age old adage that you can lead a donkey jackass to water, but you can't make him drink, right? Many of us who have kids know that feeling. Many of those know that feeling from our better half. It's a human quality, right? So it's definitely not limited to any one group of people. But the long and the short of it is that we're making the case. This is the case directly from my lips to your ears, because if anything that I'm saying doesn't resonate with you and doesn't make sense to you, you don't really care about liberty and justice for all. You don't care about equality. You don't care about dignity, decency, and integrity. You don't care about systems working properly. You don't care about balance of power. You don't care about dynamism. You don't care about people being able to live their best lives. Now, we all know people are going to make mistakes. I mean, come on, in the real world, people might become alcoholics. They might be junkies. They might, be addicted to gambling. Maybe, but we have enough room in our society where you can fall and then you can try to become reformed. The country can writ large as well. And it will. It's just at what cost, right? Will we find our footing again? Yeah, we will. How long? Is it going to be centuries? Maybe never. Maybe this is the end of the world. Maybe this is Armageddon. Maybe this is the rapture. I'm not sure. I don't have a guide into the future, but I can tell you that everything that I'm telling you is exactly the way it is, and it frames what we're in the midst of perfectly. And if you can react to it and get on board and become a nuclear reaction vector to everything that we're talking about, then we can overcome the madness of lies. We can overcome the 24-hour cycle of media that always focuses on, this much of it. Like I had prefaced earlier about, the latest budget about, closing down government on top of Doge and everything else, right? No, this is the actual reality that makes everything else possible, so that you are equipped with the information to be incredibly strong, incredibly well footed with a foundation where you can't get knocked around, you can't get suckered, you can't be fooled, you can't, they can't piss on your head telling you what's right. So the truth behind what we share, I'll click on that. The truth behind what we share. What do we come up with? Okay, well, today we all spread information, and I'm not going to go through every single line here, but I would encourage you to read these things just to have it fully digest, and you can marinate in this, and you can go back to it and you can study it. And if you want to ask questions, again, if you want to challenge me, if something doesn't make sense to you, ask me questions. It comes from this composite. But the truth behind the information we share, I just lay out exactly how it all came together. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is, well, are we living in the America we want? I don't think most of us would say, yeah, we're living in the America we want. It should be about the top 0.001% that's saying, yeah, this is what we want. We want to have complete control over the society that we're the masters and everybody else are our slaves. I mean, that's pretty much the deal. And again, not the first time in history that that's happened, right? Or even in pop culture, of course, as was personified by Game of Thrones. But is this the America we want? It's not the America I want. So we make the arguments there. And then we go on to chapter 3. Do we hold these truths to be self-evident? Well, I mean, I think that's an incredibly prophetic question. Is it meant to be rhetorical? Yeah. That's the whole point of self-evident, right? All men are created equal. Okay, does that mean we're all equal? No, we're all equal in the eyes of God. At least that's what the founders of the Constitution in our founding thought, or in the eyes of the universal truth, which might be God or might not. They were philosophical enough to know the difference, quite frankly. And that's why they did create separation of church and state, but and freedom from religion, right? So, yeah, do we hold these truths to be self-evident? I further make the point, and I don't want to go through the details, but I do get to this point here using a reference to Game of Thrones. You guys remember when Jon Snow had that incredible moment. I think it was season 6, episode 1, when all of the powers that be came together in King's Landing because of the threat of the dead to the north, that he was making the case because they had to roll out one of the zombies that they had pulled out of the north. And he had the audience of Cersei and all of the powerful families and so on and so forth. And he ultimately didn't bend the knee, was the drama, which Tyrion Lannister and Daenerys had implored him to do, because they were like, look, just tell a little bit of lie here and we'll get what we want and we'll all live happily ever after. And Jon, throughout the whole progression of Game of Thrones, had been going down the path to the existential threat, which in our case is climate change, that we're all going to die if we don't get a bearing on this and we hold it, and figure out this problem. That, he said, when enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything, then there are no more answers and only better and better lies. When I saw that, my jaw dropped, because I was living that, and I've been living it every single day. I mean, I don't lie. I don't exaggerate. I mean, I'm talking about the greatest calamity in the history of the world by way of the financial corruption that never ended, that brings us numbers that are extraordinary, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you exactly what it is. And again, I want to remind you, is there a better way to spend $71 trillion than on this insane corruption that is sending us back 50 years, particularly as it relates to not just all things culture wars, but probably more importantly, not more importantly, as importantly, but in a different way, but in a way that we're really playing roulette with our lives because of all of the things that we've seen in the last many years, because of climate disaster, because of climate change, is, of course, the climate. And we're going back to drill, baby, drill, okay? Which is not the answer to the problems. And is there a better way to spend $71 trillion than on billionaires that are trying to get everybody and destroy everybody? Of course there is. You're not that stupid if you've made it this long. I know that. So who am I? Well, let's take a look. I'm the guy on a skateboard with a face mask that's waving my American flag and a fuck you gesture to all the corruption and everything else that exists. I'm the guy that's got the answers, because you can't see the forest for the trees because of the emperor's new clothes on really, really bad acid. So I talk about the elephant in the room, the satirical reality, because I like to look at things through the lens of, quite frankly, everything from all the stuff that I grew up that I loved, whether it was Mel Brooks or Monty Python or National Lampoon or Mad Magazine. All of the satire is like, you got to have a sense of humor about this stuff, even though it's so overwhelmingly insane. You got to be able to, laugh about it, because if you can't laugh, what then? Great callback to a wonderful movie called, what was it? Not The Usual. No, it was The Usual. No, it wasn't The Usual Suspects. There's a great movie from the 90s that proclamated this stuff. I can't remember what it was. If you can't trust your friends, what then, right? Look, the satire of this stuff is on overdrive, but you got to laugh at it. But together we can laugh. But at the same time, hopefully that's because we can communicate together. And then ultimately we join hands and unify as one to overwhelm this insanity, because our lives depend on it. Because this is a circus beyond imagination. And then I qualify the bigger picture. And then, of course, I juxtapose it to the current reality to drive the point home. And I really encourage you guys to please share this and to marinate on this and to think about it from your own perspective. Because once you get there, you got to dig deeper. And I love what Tosh did here with our books, because it is all about research. And what a great visual representation, but in context to what I just said. Donald Trump, the Mad King, right? I mean, look, people, this is what you got to understand. Who doesn't know that Donald Trump is a criminal? I think probably 80% of MAGA knows that he's a criminal. They just don't care because they're criminals themselves. Or they're just like, fuck it, the trans people, fuck black people, fuck Mexicans, Kamala, whatever. We don't care anymore. We want to be in a society where our patriarchy, our white supremacy, we're more important in society than everybody else, because we just think that way because our parents told us that. And we're too stupid to know the difference. But, oh yeah, Trump's a liar, but he's our liar. Something like that. I mean, that's always been the way it has been, quite frankly, in neighborhoods with strongmen in the mafiocracy in our big cities, everybody's like, oh yeah, Tony the Goomba is a bad news guy, but he's at least our bad news guy against all the other bad news guys, right? So that's kind of the mentality. But it's like, look, what I do is I reveal to you that Donald Trump is the ultimate red carpet reflection of the corruption that both gave birth to him and enabled him. And he was just a mid-level player in all the corruption that's been going on, quite frankly, the last 40 years. Okay. And I use that to dovetail into what our financial system is, because you've got to understand that, as I say here, let's just read the top of this. It says Trump's criminal reality. Donald Trump is a man on the run who outran the insurrection. He outran 91 felony accounts that are in short order, defrauding the United States using deceptive acts and practices, falsifying business records alongside the racketeering effort, using forgeries to steal the Electoral College while running a massive racketeering scheme to steal the election. And he got away with it. Trump wasn't taken down because of the Supreme Court corruption. But as much as the entire federal government couldn't bring the hammer down on one guy, what I'm revealing to you is the exact same methodology and all of that stuff. Defrauding the United States using deceptive acts and practices, falsifying business records and fabrication of forgeries and so on and so forth. We did that to the tune of tens of millions involving tens of thousands of people. That's what I'm revealing to you. That if our federal government couldn't take out one guy doing that, how could they take down what it is that I'm revealing to you? Can you now see the forest for the trees? Do the angels sing? Does it occur to you like, holy shit? Yes, that's what I'm revealing to you. And if you don't believe me, after this tutorial, go to thecon.tv. Watch it yourself. Challenge me. And then check a look at the new Untouchables, my podcast that I had to do after the fact. Look at it and see the stuff that's on this website. See if you can poke holes in any of it. You can't. I'm not a guy that's just a regular dude that is speaking in hyperbole, that is pretending these are all answers to some mythical problem that's out there. No, I did the work that cost millions of dollars, and I worked at the highest levels of the people in our government to ferret this out, and whistleblowers, to where we got all the evidence. And that's why I got quashed. And that's why I'm spending all of this exorbitant amount of time to be exuberant, to reveal this magnificent website that then takes us to the bigger picture. Trump's actions are just a drop in the bucket compared to the widespread financial terrorism that has devastated millions of Americans. This systemic corruption led to the financial collapse, the divorces and suicides and homelessness by the thousands. The financial terrorism is unheard of. And I know if you're watching this and you've lived through this, you know I'm speaking truth. You, most notably, have got to champion this if you've been a victim of this, okay? And more of you are happening that by the day. And because what we did was we protected the guilty and we rewarded the guilty. That's anti-American. And so the ultimate question is, if you're perplexed how Elon and Trump can conceivably break the law with impunity, with corruption like the world has never seen for all to see, that has decimated the federal government through Doge, are you beginning to get a sense of what I'm laying down? Yeah, I think you might be, if you've lasted this long, and thank you for doing so. Keep going, because there's more. Our reality, okay? I spell it out again. What happened during the insurrection? What was the insurrection? I'll just say this in context of the insurrection, okay? The J6 Inquiry Commission tried to put Trump as the mastermind. Has Trump been the mastermind of anything? No, of course not. Trump's a fucking buffoon. But he was surrounded by the likes of Eric Prince, Steve Bannon, and many others in the billionaire apparatuses that could pull off something as monumentally insane as tens of thousands of what I think were mercenaries, many of whom were probably paid by the billionaires that I just mentioned, because they were pros. They had come back from Afghanistan and Iraq. They were on the free market. They got hired. They go and they bust up the Capitol. And then, oh yeah, by the way, there's more firepower in the surrounding, what do they call it, inside the Beltway than anywhere on earth. Do you think that we couldn't have, unleashed, I don't know, the National Guard to start, but not to mention, like all of the special forces and so forth, to just put down the insurrection like that? Of course they could have done that, but they didn't. because there were guys on the inside at the Pentagon and also in the police structure and and all of the other things I've just mentioned. Not to mention, of course, yeah, Trump as the president could tell all of those forces as the chief executive to stand down, which did happen, but it wasn't without everybody being involved with it too. Because I got to believe, and I'm sure many of you have asked this question, right? Our capital was under siege. It was under siege. Now, if it was under siege by a bunch of Hamas terrorists, would we respond? If it was under siege by Black Lives Matter, would we respond? Yeah, and again, those are rhetorical questions. Of course, we would have responded with brutality and overwhelming force, but that didn't happen. So, look, that and media responsibility. Before Trump became Il Duce, with a reference to him being, and I encourage you to look it up if you don't know who I'm referring to. His name is Benito Mussolini, which is what Trump reminds me of a lot more than Adolf Hitler. I'll tell you that. Trump isn't Hitler, but Mussolini, yeah. But the long and the short of it is that he was a creation of media. Donald Trump was. Media moguls like Jeff Zucker and CNN and Les Moonves and Viacom played a dangerous game with our democracy for ratings. This is my business. I've been watching this for the last 30 years, and it's absolutely nauseating. These guys thought it was fun to play roulette with our democracy, and they did. And now they're nowhere to be seen, and nobody's actually getting accountability from them, which we should. We should embarrass and humiliate and protest and do whatever it takes to out these motherfuckers that did all this stuff to bring Trump to power. But, ultimately, the show The Apprentice was literally a front for international money laundering through the Saudis and Russia, particularly Putin and the oligarchs, okay? Think about that. It was all a facade. So how far back does this plan go to get Trump into the presidency and you're fired? I wonder if they concocted this stuff back in the late 90s, quite frankly, that would take us to that era. Or was it just a convergence? I don't know. But the long and the short of it is the outcome and the consequences is exactly what we all know it to be based on what I'm saying. And so when you understand that Donald Trump is a history of fraud, and if you go to my YouTube page, I've got a lot of great interviews with the foremost expert in all things Donald Trump, a guy by the name of David K. Johnston, has shown us time and time again over the course of decades that Donald Trump should have been in prison decades ago. Donald Trump has been breaking the law for decades, and he was never taken down. That was a failure of our judicial system. That was a failure of prosecutors and DAs and everybody in the system that decided not to bring cases because it was the chicken shit club. They didn't want to take a chance. They didn't want to gamble with their careers. They didn't have enough resources to go against Donald's big time attorneys and all that kind of stuff. And so they laid down only to make it possible for this guy to get worse and worse and worse over the course of his, the last 40 years to get him to a position to completely decimate our government. Was that the play all along, the Manchurian candidate? Yeah, we could talk about that later, but that's not the focus of right now. But again, you see that I go back to the bigger picture a lot. As overwhelming as all of this is, I'm telling you, this Trump is a drop in the bucket compared to what I revealed to you on the con. The scheme that involved tens of millions of felonies and trillions of dollars. That's what I continue to hit over and over and over because you've got to understand that Trump is the emperor's new clothes to reflect the madness on a red carpet, okay? Which leads us to the financial terrorism, the systemic fraud that defrauded millions and then used our courts to bury millions. And if you were a part of that and you've laid out this long and you're listening to this, hopefully it's the angels singing and you can get behind this because you want everybody to know that you've been legitimized, that you actually knew what you were talking about when you knew that they couldn't take your house because they didn't have standing to do that. Things like that. Yeah, all of that information is here. So, okay, is it too overwhelming again? And for those of you who are quick to the take, when you first see this, you can jump down to the meat and potatoes of the subject. But I just explained, what are we going to do? We've got to redo everything. We practically look. Bernie Sanders had said, from 2016 on forward, he's like, we have to have a revolution. But what he kept saying was a revolution of our consumerism, of our intellectual capacity, and a revolution of really to reinstate the law, quite frankly, was part and parcel to it. But he never gave us details, right? Yeah, we do have to have a revolution. I'm offering a peaceful path forward through a civil rights-like revolution based on, the jig is up because you've got all the information. That's why I'm spending this amount of time to walk you through this and that we created this so that you can know that all of the answers are here to give you the right stuff to join us so that we could create a domino to where we could create, this massive critical mass that's got to come behind the truth, right? But the way we're going to have to do this, guys, is we're going to have to, in addition to protest all over the country, we're going to have to gather in mass in Washington, D.C. And this is becoming more and more dangerous by the day because Trump has hijacked, overcome, through a coup, has gotten complete control of the FBI, has gotten complete control of the Department of Justice, has gotten complete control of the Pentagon. That means he's got the guns in the law. Okay, and they're all serving him. They're not a guy that was convicted of 34 felonies, a guy that's been breaking the law for years, a guy who's a treasonous bastard with Putin. But they're doing it because it created this groundswell of this white supremacy that's always been amongst us. That all of the Republican leadership will not go against because they don't want to be voted out of office. So they're complicit in this whole thing. History is going to look down on these guys just like we do Nazis. Whether or not we want to compare them to Nazis, we don't know yet, right? Completely. I mean, we're close enough. But at the same time, it's like we got to show up by the millions, okay? And as I go through here, the biggest inspiration are these two gentlemen on this page for me. And I would throw in, Thomas Jefferson and some of the founding fathers as well. And there's always a lot of great heroes in our history that I could go to. But Abraham Lincoln, who said that a nation of, by, and for the people shall not perish from this earth, and had to win, and then die trying, right, through the Civil War, to liberate the bondage of slavery, to live true to what we put on paper, which is what, obviously the Reverend Martin Luther King had to do when he proclaimed that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And so we have to have that spirit, and we have to get to DC together at the right time when millions of us are on board, when millions of us are actually moving forward. And we've got to show up, and we've got to surround the corruption at the Federal Reserve, at the Congress, at the Supreme Court, at the SEC, and probably the FBI. And then we're going to have to then, as a group, hopefully led by everybody in our society. And it has to be millions of us. It has to be millions of us, because will there be tear gas involved? Probably. Will Donald Trump, unlike what he did for January 6th, bring out the guns? I would imagine. Even though we'll be expressing our First Amendment constitutional right to protest and free speech. But that ship has sailed, because they're going to call us terrorists, because that's what autocrats do. Lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate. Yes, this is dangerous, but at the same time, it's like there's only one way to do this, because everything that I am introducing to you now, of which maybe 1 in 1,000 are going to read, maybe 1 in a million, or listen to, or paying attention to, you've got to be the early adapters to become the nuclear reaction vectors for this, so that we all get on the same page, so that we can grow this in a monumental way based on the facts, and nobody else is going to get in their silos. You can protest Black Lives Matter. You can protest, Me Too. You can protest teachers that have been fired from the Department of Education and so on down the line. But if you stay in your unified groups for whatever your rallying cry is, you're not seeing the forest for the trees. You don't understand the corruption that has created this monumental betrayal and disaster of billionaires being above the law and market forces, which is tyranny. It's exactly what the United States and these gentlemen fought against in their own time periods, right? And we've got to do it again. And again, I'm saying it peacefully, because if we show up by the millions and we have a flash mob that surrounds all of these corrupt institutions, particularly the Supreme Court. Did I say the Supreme Court? And then we all in unison exodus, just like the tribe of Israel escaping Pharaoh, and we walk to the National Mall. I will present all of this material to the American people as the producer, with a lot more innovative and fun things to look at. And it's going to be produced in a way that, that we film live and we get people involved, and hopefully we have the right kind of celebrities involved, and it's just people mass and critical mass, and we're all marching together in unison for liberty and justice for all, to get the power back from the corrupt and the evil and the wicked. And this is, the end of the line, right? I mean, this is Armageddon, and quite frankly, from the standpoint of good versus evil, who do you think the wicked are? Me? Yeah, no, that's not me. I'm professing truth and justice, the liberty of justice for all. And so we have to do that. And that's the end game here. Okay. But can we do that without resources? No, we can't. We can't do that without resources. But beyond all of that, you can't get a political manifestation for something that you don't pay for. The Supreme Court made that abundantly clear through the reality of Citizens United, where they made shadow money legal, which is corruption. And again, why does Elon Musk spend $277 million dollars to buy the presidency? Well, among other things, to get like $181 billion dollars in 6 weeks after the presidency. I mean, my God, that's got to be the greatest return on investment in the history of the world, people. It's exactly everything I'm talking about, a reflection that you can't ignore. Okay. But the same goes for our oil industry. I think, Trump said, give me $1 billion and I'll get us back. I'll get all the regulation out of your hair and you can drill, baby, drill. And, you won't have any taxes. Yeah. $1 billion from that group was probably a small cost to bear for the upside. That's going to destroy us faster than it already was, and so on and so forth. And so, what we've done here is we've asked you to consider donating $13 or grab some swag. And what's so cool about the swag is that if you go to this button, and I'm going a little bit further, but you can either donate, and it's a nonprofit, and I'm asking you to donate $13, and I've got a whole bunch of videos on the subject. But 13 is the number of revolution. It's also harmony in the universe. There's a lot of corollaries to the American Revolution. And ultimately, it's all over the dollar bill. And it's the eye of providence, and it's justice, and it's liberty, and it's all of these things. And yeah, I just thought that, look, there's over 150 million people that got devastated by the great financial crisis. But, if 13 million of us, which is, I think, is about 7% of that, came together and donated $13, we'd have $169 million, and we could create a new party. We could call it the Liberty Justice for All Party or Forward Party or whatever party we come up with, because the two parties are corrupt. Or we could have enough, momentum and power and leverage to reform the Democratic Party, which is a possibility of two, right? But right now they're both corrupt to the gills, the Republicans and the Democrats. The Democrats allowed this to happen during Obama, which then, of course, enabled everything that happened since. But I'm not really the biggest on donations. I'm not a nonprofit guy. I'm an entrepreneur and all sorts of stuff. But this is all nonprofit what we're doing. But I was like, look, the one thing about MAGA that blew my mind was that they were all in on buying hats made in China to what? Celebrate, creating new industry in America. I mean, the insanity of the lobotomized zombie apocalypse that MAGA represents is unbelievable. But they did wear their colors and they bought the merchandise. And there's no other way you can tell in this country whether you're selling an album or a TV show or anything else, is if people don't buy it, it doesn't live in the country. So yeah, we created incredible product. And if you look at some of this product, I don't know if I can actually, I'm going to have to go to it a different place, but we've created incredible hats and shirts, and I'll walk you through that in a minute. In fact, I better go up to that right now. Let's just see if I can go up to that right now. If you go to the top, yeah, support, okay? So you could support our cause, tells you about the nonprofit status, or the New Deal swag. You come here and look at some of these products. I mean, what we've created, and I say this as a shortcut, is that when you live in light, you live in truth. When you lie, you're depraved. When you have the truth, you're bulletproof. When you lie, inside you die. Stop buying lies, stop lying. Everything's a lie right now. That's, going back to the Jon Snow metaphor, right? And so we've created these incredible products. And here comes Roseanne Rabiella Mile, but I'll let her ride a little bit later. But Stop Lying mug. You've got it for, the handkerchief bandana for the dog. We've got great swag. We've got incredible t-shirts. And when you live in truth, you live in light. That's cool. I haven't seen that one before. And, we've got so much more. So you can kind of, peruse this if there's anything that you're interested in. We've got backpacks. We've got hats, and also we've got, my work, The Con, we were all sold a lie. We've got these tote bags. We've got protectors for your phone. We've got these shirts. But I kept thinking about, these pins, for example. It says here, when you have the truth, you're bulletproof. I mean, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that want to live in truth, that don't want to grow up to be liars, because who wants to teach their kids to lie to get ahead in society, which is what we should do if we're living in this age period. But I'm being cynical because I'll never do that. Dude, the truth is all that matters. And all the American people buy our lies. I'm trying to work within our system to actually use real entrepreneurialism and real dynamics of industry to get your buy-in so that we can all share in the face of this MAGA zombie apocalypse of lies how important the truth is. And I swear to God, they've had to have quashed me because we have not sold anything yet. But it's like, there's no way we couldn't. Look at how cool this product is. It's unbelievable. And does it sound like an infomercial? Yeah, but are these products that I would want to buy? Yeah. Look at this, the Clean New Deal truth bomb, like a nuclear bomb. You become a nuclear reaction vector to the big bomb, big bang of truth I'm dropping. How about on your surf wagon? You know, the same thing. I mean, come on, guys. This is America. This is America. You wear what is important to you. And if you buy it, it proves to everybody else that they're going to buy it. And then it all goes into this thing. So is this to make me rich? Am I a con man? No, again, I remind you, we spent millions of dollars to give you all of this product for free. We're giving you the $71 trillion for free, truth for free, that the entire system has buried from you so that you can be liberated from corruption. And quite frankly, you're conditioned by the Supreme Court as a citizen that you have to have buy-in. And so it just checks off all the boxes. Yeah. And what are we going to do with it? Okay. Well, what we're going to do is organize the march I just talked about and a new party, among other things. And I'm the producer and I know how to do that. And yeah, all I'm asking you for is $13. I'm not asking you for 130,000. I'm not asking you for 13 million. If you want to kick that in, God bless you. But because money talks, bullshit walks, right? But we've got to come together based on everything I'm saying. And I wanted to give you, basically an insight as to what that's all about. So going back, so again, you remember I told you if you hit the Clean New Deal up here, that can take you back to the homepage, and then that can get you to where we just were. And so to remind you where we are in this journey, we just went through all of this stuff on the homepage, and then I just walked you through everything in terms of the yellow brick road, okay, that got you through to what we're going to do, okay? But if you go back to the top at this time, then you can learn more about me, okay? You can learn more about the people that are involved with us and what our mission is. And I won't go through that with you because, you can see it for yourself. And there's more articles that I've written that just drive the point home, but you can see our mission statement, our vision statement, and then also, how does this affect you, right? It's always like, how does this affect you? And I can't emphasize this enough. What we're seeing with Doge really brings this all full circle, because what I learned after the great financial crisis, even though millions of people were going through this, they were shamed, they were set up, they didn't understand what had happened, they didn't understand all of the stuff that I'm revealing to you, and they all felt like they failed. And so they were easily because they were vulnerable, they were easily quashed, they were easily manipulated. And a lot of these people, their lives were ruined, okay? Absolutely freaking ruined. And a lot of them probably, like, what do we call it? The Stockholm syndrome. I've seen a lot of them go to Trump because they hated the Obama administration so much for what happened. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you can't be against corruption and for Trump. That's the most ridiculous thing in the world. That's like being against racism and for Hitler. You can't do it. It's yet all of these people are like, oh yeah, but the other side's worse. No, they're all in on the same game. They're just different variations of it. It's the new robber barons versus the new Confederacy, quite frankly. Okay. Same as it ever was, right? So, we go further into how does this affect you? And you have to answer that yourself. But what we've done here, which is very important, is that we put our work that you can see for free in its entirety. If you want to study, and if you want to, try to poke holes in me, if you want to try to see holes in what I'm saying now, whether or not it's speaking to you, whether or not you think I'm lying, whether you think you can get me in a gotcha moment, whatever. Here's our work. You can go to the con. Again, it's free. It'll take you right to the actual work. The New Untouchables was what the con season 2 was supposed to be if I didn't get quashed by BlackRock and all the people that want to make sure that you can't know the truth. And then I've done for now 2.5 years, I guess. I don't know exactly how many years. It's a lot. Where I've got like I don't know, 565 truth bombs that are telling you basically the same thing. You can go back and see everything I've said that is revealing what's happening on that day with what the information is that I have that led to us creating this whole thing. And that's all available there. So I left the breadcrumbs. So just in case somehow I mysteriously disappear, that all of this information is out here for the whole world to see. And again, we made it for free because all the American people buy our lies. And if you feel compelled by all of the things that we're doing to push this boulder up the mountain in this righteous grind for liberty and justice for all predicated on truth, which isn't hyperbolic or philosophical or ideology, which is based in all of the evidence that we show you, then yeah, it would be great if you could buy in to our campaign. Because when power is abused, everyone pays the price. We've got to break the cycle of corruption. Just like a woman who's in a battered wife syndrome, you got to break the cycle of violence. I mean, I don't know. Everybody knows this. And if you go through this, I said, I got tired of them pissing on my head telling me it was rain. Yeah, that's what everybody else is in the same boat, man. They're pissing on your head telling you it's rain when you don't have this information. And I've got further videos here. I did a really cool interview recently with a guy by the name of Mark Thompson, who's a podcaster and a veteran radio guy on the West Coast, who has a pretty big audience. And he interviewed me and I laid out all this stuff. And maybe you've come here as a result of that. So, there that interview is, and it's great if you want to kind of see how I presented this stuff in 25 minutes versus however long I'm talking now. But you can see we've got other videos that I did on Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs the Con. And you'll see here that I've got interviews with guys like David K. Johnson, who's the foremost expert on all things Donald Trump, who tells you about all the details of what Trump's been doing for decades, as well as William K. Black, who was my mentor, who basically is the Michael Jordan of criminology. William K. Black, I found in a miraculous way, and I learned this isn't something that you read in school books or anything else, but I learned as a result of just being at the right place at the right time and also research and so forth, that he was basically the impetus behind creating all of the, shall we say, everything that was involved with taking down the savings and loan crisis back in the late 80s, early 90s, which was a calamitous fraud in our financial institutions that used commercial banking and commercial properties. And it was much more complex than what happened in the housing collapse of 2008. But he took it all down and he got all the white collar executives in prison, 1,700 of them, for something that was huge at the time, but was 1/180th the size of the great financial crisis of 2008. Yeah, I learned from the best. Okay. And as I said earlier, this is the righteous grind of truth. I think that picture on the lower right hand captures it magically. That's what this is, man. Pushing the boulder up the truth to the top of the mountain. But I want you to think about this, guys, in terms of that picture. The struggle to be alone on this journey it has devastated me in ways and required more commitment and insanity than I've ever thought possible in my life. And yet, if millions of you joined me to push this boulder to the top of the mountain and over the side, A, it would be very light, and B, we would use it as the bowling ball to wipe out the bowling pins of corruption. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's the core of everything. That is the tumor of how everything works, okay? And so I'm getting to the absolute, what do we call it in a symphony when the everything is spiraling to the end and it gets bigger and bigger, that a crescendo, okay? So I've already gone over what we must do in terms of being, in protests all around the country, but at the same time that we have to congregate in DC, but also this is really what it's all about, the precepts of the Clean New Deal, okay? Problem, solution, problem, solution. We had all of these scenarios that happened with trust busting all the way through the New Deal because they dealt with the problems of their time and they created resolutions to these problems so that our government could function of, by, and for the people as opposed to of, by, and for the corruption. And so the way we've created the precepts of the Clean New Deal is you've got to understand the four questions. And the four questions are, as you see through this, and this, and Tosh, again, just designed this so brilliantly. What is qualified immunity? Well, I encourage you to read the technical definition. And if you click on this, you'll find it. But you can tell that it's connected to Black Lives Matter because of that photo. And then what is judicial immunity? And what is presidential immunity, right? And what is the electoral college? See, once you understand the perversion of power and that the law isn't supreme and that there are elements of our society baked into this whole thing based on power that are a perversion of what we're talking about, where all men are created equal and that one person, one vote, we know that's not the case. As I'm building this army of the many versus the money is what talks. And those that are in charge of the money in the power, they can be above the law and they can use the law to suppress um, those that are below the law that could be a threat to their control, their tyranny. And that's what this whole thing is about. It's tyranny. It's all upside down, inside out. The devil, greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince the world he didn't exist. I mean, people, it's so monstrous, it's so monumentally insane. But at the same time, it's so easy once you get there, you become like Neo in the Matrix, where you see the stuff in slow motion, right? But once you understand how this stuff perverts the so-called democracy, which we're not a democracy, of course, what you get to is the Rubik's Cube. When you put all the pieces together, you finally have all the answers, and eureka, you're solid, okay? And so what we have established as the precepts of the Clean New Deal, remember, problem, solution, what are we going to do? This is the vision that the Democratic Party doesn't have. Now, Bernie Sanders is talking about a little bit of this, and I believe he's seen a lot of what I'm talking about, and he speaks in platitudes, and I think he's plagiarized me just like Trump plagiarized him. Kind of crazy world that we live in. I guarantee you, I know that Elon Musk has paid attention to much of what I put out there. I guarantee you Steve Bannon has. I guarantee you that all the people that are in control of the madness that we're in, they all know what I put out there. They all know what I'm saying. In fact, they've used it to further denigrate our system in pursuit of what they're doing. But the millions of you need to rise to the moment to understand what this is. And I believe that, the first early adopters, like I said at the beginning of this thing, have got to be those that understand the law and geopolitics and market forces and our history and so forth, that have the capacity to become early adopters. You guys have got to be the nuclear vectors that, then spread this light far and wide, because the algos have been designed to suppress the truth. The money has been used to suppress the truth. Again, I'm giving you something that cost us millions of dollars for free. Please understand, this is our reality. So the first precept of the Clean New Deal is we've got to recreate a modern day Glass-Steagall Act to separate commercial banking from investment banking while ensuring the full faith and credit of the United States can never again be used to guarantee global financial fraud and racketeering. That's what this is all about. We're just basically turning the tables on the corrupt that have used the law to turn the tables on us. We're just reverse engineering the deception and the diabolical betrayal that these guys have done to railroad and train wreck our democracy and freedom and liberty and justice for all, okay? And the most important, crucial aspect of all of that is the money. And the money comes from the source that I'm talking about. So that's the first side of the coin, quite frankly. And if you flip that coin, you get the other side of it, which is the precept number 2, which is we've got to end Citizens United, which is legalize corruption by dark money. Whatever happens in the dark is good. Ask victims of P. Diddy's freak-offs, right? Being gang raped in the dark so that they could be manipulated and further insult to injury because they were controlled at that point because of just the nature of the way that both P. Diddy as well as Weinstein and all the rest of them, quite frankly, Trump and Epstein and so on and so forth, utilize that sort of methodology. Okay. So when you get rid of the ability for the corrupt to control our government, right? My whole journey went from asking the question, how did we go from of, by, and for the people to of, by, and for the corrupt? This is the answer, those two elements. But what it all revealed on my journey was the precept number 3. We have got to demonstrate, and I've got it on this page, which is coming next, which is the ultimate crescendo of how the $71 trillion was stolen illegally. That's the most important part. It was stolen illegally. Now, it'd be one thing if it was market forces, right, where the bad guys went away. Let's just say they did everything I said, and then, all of a sudden, the economy had collapsed, and, the good guys came in to save the day, and we reconstituted our banks, and then we floated the financial system because we had to survive, we had to survive, just like it was a war and anything else. You can maybe justify that they could maybe change certain things a different way, but they didn't do that. What they did was they just manipulated the way the laws were to backdoor $71 trillion to the corrupt because they could, and nobody stopped them. Not media, not our government, not our Supreme Court. Why? Because they're all corrupt. And $71 trillion went to the billionaire apparatus that's above the law and market forces so they could rape roofie the American dream in the law, in the dark, in a P. Diddy freak off. Okay? Guys, particularly Tesla owners today, is there better ways to spend $71 trillion than on corruption? Yes, it's rhetorical. It's a silly question. Is what I'm saying real? Yeah, it is. Explore it for yourself soon. Okay. But moving forward, we've got to end. Oh, sorry. This is a very big part. And by the way, one of the many 13s that appears all over the reason why I thought 13 would be a great asking price point. But we've got to expand SCOTUS to 13 justices and enforce the canon of ethics to make the corrupt perpetrators accountable to the law, which means make, justices applicable to the same law we all are. They can't be above the law. I'm sorry. It can't be above the law. Just like, but the only way that we can do that in the short term is to expand 13 justices to overwhelm the corrupt, 6 justices of the not Warren Court, Justice Warren. Yeah. Am I lost in that? We got Kavanaugh, we got Clarence Thomas, we got Amy Coney Barrett, we've got Justice Warren. Is it Justice? Well, Alito. Chief Justice Warren. Anyway, I apologize if I messed it up. Obviously, I've gone a long time and I'm a little bit tired, but got to finish this off. This is why we call it the righteous grind. Okay, so you get it. We've got to get more people in there soon. But again, we can't do this unless we have free and fair elections, unless we have a unified political party that represents these situations, which we can't do unless millions of people are equipped with the truth that I'm laying down, which of course we can't do unless everybody, has skin in the game and we're all invested together. And by the way, what would be the dividend paid by $13 to be able to erect a new country, the Renaissance of possibility? Let me tell you, I would think that, reconstituting the law and economic systems to provide opportunity in this country for all as to be worth gazillions of dollars. Put your money where your mouth is, man. I'm telling you, that'll be the biggest, REO in the history of the world, quite frankly. If we can overcome the corruption that's, obviously destroying all of us. And again, to reiterate what we just laid out in terms of qualified immunity, presidential immunity, and the electoral college, they must all end. Nobody can be above the law and market forces. Nobody. No, that's not the United States. That when you clip that, you clip the ability of the eagle to soar. Okay. Does anybody not know that for a plane to fly, to soar, you have to overcome gravity with thrust, right? What is it? What are the 4 aspects of aeronautics? So thrust, drag. We got to overcome drag with thrust. Lift over weight, right? That's when you create the elements of soar. It has to be more energy than the energy against it. But because of the mathematics and the schematics of the materials in the process, not to mention the technology, we have learned to overcome gravity. Wow. Amazing things can happen when you let amazing people do amazing things. Yes, that's what this is all about, to unleash the American spirit, but predicated on the law. Because when honesty prevails, amazing things happen. But when Gresham's dynamic takes over and we incentivize crime, you're going to get crime. That's what we've done because of corruption. And we've got to change that by, in addition, institute term limits for U.S. senators and representatives, and then ultimately prohibit all insider trading for members of the Senate, House, representatives, the Supreme Court, and so forth, and the administration's cabinet members. My God, people, again, we've got to end corruption, period. If you're going to go into government for civic duty, the way it was designed, not to destroy the American people, but the American people have to be responsible and you have to act like citizens, not like chattel. So right now, stupid is in control, and that's chattel. And that's not to be belligerent, or stupid is a condition. It's a condition to not be adaptable to learn, quite frankly. Okay, that's the definition. But people who refuse to learn in the light of the evidence, I mean, what else can I tell you, right? That's not the way the United States is designed. And so you can insert Doge into this whole thing and public education and so on and so forth. Everything is the perversion, inversion of everything that we think we are. Okay. So that is the precepts of the Clean New Deal. Now, drum roll, please. Okay. And I'm not going to go through this absolutely in depth because I want you to experience it by yourself. But when you get to the very end, and this is the whole crescendo, I've got the evidence of everything that I've revealed to you, in addition to the con, in addition to the new untouchables. But these are the white papers. When you go through this, and I'm not going to go through it now, but this is to lay out what our economy is supposed to do and what it didn't do, and why the usage of Federal Reserve Act 13.3 illegally has created this world we live in. And nobody else is going to tell you this. I'm the only guy that's going to reveal this to you. I don't know why it was incumbent upon me to be the only guy in the world to be able to reveal this, but I am. And again, I'm not the savior. The truth is, I'm just the deliverer. You know, the long and the short of it is, you've got to do some work yourself. You've got to pull yourself up to be able to engage this. If you don't believe me, look at the detailed look on the right here. Okay, can you see my cursor? A detailed look at the Fed's bailout by funding facility and recipient. Okay, there it is. The illegal actions of the Federal Reserve. The actual interview, and this is the biggest one of all, that reveals exactly what I'm saying is truth. And this guy, Raj Cohen, came from Sullivan and Cromwell. And what does anybody know who Sullivan and Cromwell is? Sullivan and Cromwell is one of the most prestigious white shoe law firms on Wall Street that protected and magnified the interest of Wall Street from the beginning of Wall Street. And then ultimately, this guy, Raj Cohen, who was the general partner, just happens to be in a position to be able to save the financial system. And oh yeah, by the way, the Sullivan and Cromwell created the CIA. You can't make this shit up. Yeah, that's what that interview reveals. And then I've got more, through The Smoking Gun, which came from my production of the New Untouchables, which is a podcast that has all of the whistleblowers that tell you who knew what, when, and how, as well as, this stuff is incredible. The information here is never ending. And it's the information the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Chicago Sun-Tribune, the Miami Sun-Herald, all of the major papers of the country could never deliver for the American people, as didn't Rachel Maddow or Anderson Cooper or any of, we know Fox wouldn't have done it, but any of the media didn't do this for a crime that created millions and millions of calamities that led to tens of trillions of dollars being illegally given to the guys who did it. Guys, it's all right here. I don't want to go through every single one of them, but I swear to God, all of that information is there, as well as couching it, okay? And if that weren't enough, what I do was, for all of you people who were like, okay, but Kamala Harris could have saved us, right? She was the prosecutor versus the felon. No, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. She wanted to etch a sketch everything I'm telling you, and she wanted to turn the page, and she wanted to, boogie and joy. But that wasn't enough to win the presidency, unfortunately. And Tim Walz is all over the campaign trail saying they played it, safe. What does he mean they played it safe? All of these questions, from the 4 questions through the precepts of the Clean New Deal, I was asking to Tim Walz on the stump because I know he's an honest guy, but he didn't respond to it. Okay. Because he was cloistered, and he was chosen by the guy, Eric Holder, who frankly made all of this stuff possible. I shit you not, who actually had, Kamala Harris was under his wings, if you want to know the truth. Just like Pam Bondi is underneath Trump's wings, who's our AG, who's as corrupt as it gets, who came out of the time period that I'm revealing to you. People, Jesus Christ. And look at this picture right here. And I'll come back to this in a second. This picture right here is what I refer to as Neville Chamberlain Biden. He's shaking hands with the insurrectionists in the Oval Office, and then on the way out, he's going to say, beware of the oligarchs. Are you kidding me? This guy had the power of what the Supreme Court gave to him to wage war on the corruption that I'm revealing to you. And did he? No, they played it safe, man. They wanted to because they're playing for the oligarchs. They're playing for the billionaires themselves. They weren't in a position, just like Bernie Sanders, just like Rachel Maddow, just like AOC, just like Elizabeth Warren. They're not a threat to the corruption. They play by the corrupt's rules. What I'm revealing to you right here is the ultimate threat to the corruption. That if in the minds and hearts and souls of millions of you, to where we can't be played, we turn the tables. And then we crush the misery of tyranny to create the renaissance of possibility. And I lay out the whole case that includes all the stuff that obviously Donald Trump was indicted for, that they didn't take him down for. And I put that against the context of, MAGA and the technocracy, which are now the techno bros, right? And then, we just lay the whole thing out, okay? And then you realize in the end, it's not rocket science, it's racketeering. But the final piece of the puzzle, okay? And this has been a long roadmap, but a long roadmap to salvation. It's not long enough to save your country, people. If you could last through this, imagine what it would have taken to be in the trenches of World War I fighting for your country, or on the front lines of the abolitionists, or in the Civil War, or, you get my drift. What I'm revealing to you is nothing. And I'm the one who did the work. I'm the one who sacrificed my family. I'm the one who ended up getting a divorce. I am the one that literally got rug pulled by this whole thing, and I keep going. Why? Well, there's a lot of reasons why, but primarily, and most above all else, because I live for liberty and justice for all. It's not something I take lightly, as personified by everything that I'm doing, right? But at the same time, it's because I have the answers, and it's become incumbent upon me to make this declaration, this case to the American people, so that, my God, please respond to this and become a nuclear reaction vector, especially those of you who went through the final phase of this. So, guys, the judiciary. Now, there's a lot of talk right now that the judiciary is going to save us because of all of the other things that are involved with the Republicans that have the numbers in Congress and what happened in the Supreme Court, right? And so we've got these federal judges that are like kneecapping Doge and saying, yeah, no, you got to pay for these temporary employees, and you didn't, fire them correctly, and you don't have the right to be able to insert yourself into the Treasury, and you don't have your right to pull payments in Medicaid and Medicare and all of those types of things. And so maybe people are like, oh my God, no, the judiciary is saving us. Okay, look, like everything else, the judiciary is filled with good actors and bad actors, with appointees from quite frankly Reagan through Bush through Clinton through Bush the second through obviously Obama and then Trump, right? And so there's people from all sorts of different sorts of backgrounds and different layers of the judicial system. But what I'm revealing to you here, and this is probably one of the most shocking to me of the whole thing outside of the Supreme Court, right? And Judge Samuel Alito waving an upside down flag as in perverting the meaning of it, because it just means American distress, as we saw the courageous park rangers at Yosemite hanging an upside down flag over the legendary El Capitan, which is one of the most glorious things I've ever seen in my life. But guys, in the aftermath of the great financial crisis, you got to understand that, as I laid out here, and as ultimately what the ultimate revelation is from this reflection of Donald Trump being the red carpet reflection of everything that happened. You remember when I mentioned that the shortcut to understanding what the federal government, with all of the different entities involved, from Fani Willis to Letitia James to Alvin Bragg to Jack Smith, and I think that covers it, right? Yeah. And I'm not going into the judges, although Judge Eileen Cannon, of course, was corrupt and obviously was part of the bad judges that prevented this stuff from moving in her courts by way of, the Mar-a-Lago case, right? But the shortcut is that Donald Trump used deceptive acts and practices to defraud the United States using falsification of business records and massive forgeries. In a nutshell, all of those elements in a grand racketeering scheme, all of those elements appear in everything that I'm revealing to you about the con. Except, again, like I said earlier, the federal government, with all of its power and 10,000s of employees and billions of dollars of budget, could not pull the noose around one corrupt actor by the name of Donald Trump. What I'm revealing to you is our entire financial system. CEOs, the financial system, thousands of people in it that were involved with these felonies, and it was organized crime through every dimension of what the pipeline was. And in the end, the judiciary used the same methodology with corrupt attorneys, using the same deceptive acts and practices and falsification of business records and forgeries and perjury and all manner, shape, or form of what I've just mentioned. And I think I said forgeries, but that was probably one of the biggest aspects of it all, to destroy millions of people illegally. They didn't have standing in the courts. I know that people and attorneys argue what's known as right of assignments, and that's all horseshit too, when you understand that this whole thing was a panoply of insanity. It was a nuclear bomb fraud. It blew up. People were chasing the numbers so quickly. They were incentivized to chase the numbers. All of this is on display in the con, which then leads you to this grand odyssey to the end of what I've just revealed to you, which has taken quite a long time. And so thank you for tuning in. And again, the support, our swag, contact Patrick Lovell. If you see any holes that you want any questions to, if you want to challenge me, whatever. But if you don't, and I got your attention long enough, you'll never see Rachel Maddow the same way again. You'll never see Bernie Sanders the same way again, using platitudes to talk about the oligarchs. Now you know what they did. They're not just oligarchs, which is some kind of fanciful term that talks about rich people who have a lot of power. That's kind of like using the term shenanigans to talk about fraud. Fraud is illegal theft by deception that has different degrees of outcomes based on what the crime was. And the mother lode of them all is RICO, racketeering, influence, corrupt organization, which should have been used to take down the entire system, of which, by the way, and here's another miracle in this whole thing. In the con, in our episode 1, I show you that we found the only RICO conviction in the entire country that took place in the great state of Ohio that should have been the entire causality of the FBI and the Department of Justice and the AGs around the country to take out all of the CEOs on Wall Street. But they chose not to do that because they didn't believe that the system could withstand it. They just basically expended they believed the American people expendable and threw them in the garbage and the refuse of the world. And now we are here, 13 years later in terms of my journey. And so I'll finish up with what I always finish up with, guys. Look, seriously, if you made it this far, thank you. I really appreciate you. Please, please, please endeavor more and share this like everything depends on it. It does. Okay. Again, when you live in truth, you live in light. Think about Lady Justice, the light of truth. Think about the eye of providence. Think about everything that's on the dollar bill that represents liberty. It's always about the light. Why? Because the universal construct is that light overcomes the darkness with energy. Through the supernova, you have got to become the energy, because when you have the truth, you're bulletproof. Okay. When you lie, like Donald Trump and Elon Musk and everything else, you're depraved. And if you're like everybody else in the system, like the complicit Republicans, inside you die. You're not going to get your soul back. If you believe in heaven and hell, if you believe in a God, if you believe in an all-knowing God and a God of eternal judgment, there is no way in hell that God is going to let you get away with it. So whether or not we turn the tables on you now or later, your fate is already sealed. It really is. But I like to live for now on this earth, and we'll see what happens if Providence, if we're rewarded in the afterlife. I'd like to think so. I'd like to see my grandfather, who basically gave me the inspiration to believe that anything was possible and that truth and honor matter above all else. And that's what I infused in my 13th birthday at my bar mitzvah speech, that honor is everything that matters and honesty is everything that matters and integrity is everything that matters. Because it does. And the truth has value, even though nobody knows that at the moment, because they're all vulnerable to buying lies, because nobody has the capacity to understand the truth. Unless you help me get the truth to the millions of people that need to hear it, because our government and our media didn't do it, because they're corrupt. Stop lying, stop buying lies. Join me in unity. If you, me, and everybody you see who isn't a Nazi, who believes in liberty and sustainability and decency and empathy and beauty, if we unite in unity, right? If we come together in unity, it's our destiny to create the Clean New Deal, which will then generate the renaissance of possibility, to purge the misery of tyranny, to unleash the renaissance of possibility. Guys, thank you. I love you for joining us. Please spread the word. Remember the hashtags: purge corruption, the Clean New Deal, hashtag the Clean New Deal, hashtag redeem the dream, hashtag truth is marching. Look, I've done everything I can do. I've made the case. I've given you everything I have. I'm throwing myself at your mercy, but at the same time, my hand is out. If you join me, right, you take my hand, enforce this truth into the void of darkness, we will be liberated from tyranny. The Red Sea is parting. I am not the savior. The truth is, I'm just the deliverer. Join me and be liberated in an exodus from corruption, or ignore me and drown. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Roseanne Rabiot-Amili. I work with Patrick Lovell, producer of The Con, the explosive expose on the world's biggest criminal conspiracy. America isn't of, by, and for the people. It's ruled by con men, working for billionaires, rigging the system while you struggle to survive. They've got the judges, the cops, the military in their pocket, but you can still fight back. The Clean New Deal is the answer to purge the pollution of corruption. Donate $13 or grab some merch to be part of the movement. Time is running out. Redeem the dream. Rise up or be drowned. Go to thecleannewdeal.org today.
My God, both Roseanne Rabiot-Amili and Tosh Labrum are they're angels from heaven, and I know millions of you out there will be like this. Will be like us. Sorry, if you can get there. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that.